Hello everybody, SirMonkeySuit is up here, back again with ReZero 1 episode 16. So yeah, we took a week break. We didn't have any ReZero episodes last week. I changed the the schedule and format around, so yeah, I'll have to take a week hiatus, but we're back. So it's going to be the same for ReZero, still every like 2 episodes every Thursday. So we're back on it. But yeah, so episode 16. So what happened in the last 2 episodes was it has been a while since Subaru's been sort of trapped in like a death loop, but we're back to it. This obviously revolves around what's happening in the mansion. He's heard what's going on, shit's happening. Ram is sort of telepathically told Rem something's happening. She tells Subaru, and of course, because it's Subaru, he wants to go fucking, help Amelia and whatnot, even though she, basically ordered him not to go back. And this all ends essentially in Ram, Rem, and Amelia always dying. So it is a sort of tough one. Like, there is a sort of element of Subaru always has to make a choice to somehow just avoid people dying, and therefore, like, when he fails, he always goes back to do it again. It maybe just change something slightly that progresses sort of forward without anybody dying. But yeah, it's crazy. This one's got to do with sort of what I imagine is witch cultists anyway. So yeah, I believe this Archbishop or whatever that we met, he represents Sloth. There's a bunch of like Sloth witch cultists or whatever the fuck. Called Beetlejuice. Somebody commented saying that that's not pronounced Beetlejuice. It is. Like, it may not like sound that way when the Japanese try to pronounce the word, but the word in English is actually pronounced Beetlejuice, not Beetlejuice or whatever. It is pronounced Beetlejuice. But yeah, crazy motherfucker. And also, I want to. Somebody asked, somebody was confused last video and commented saying that he was confused and wondered whether or not I was actually liking the show or not. And I can see why that is. Mostly, I think what he was referring to was, he was probably expecting me to be a bit more emotionally involved. And, I can see a couple of reasons as to why, I'm not. I think the main reasons, probably the one that people could guess, is that story-wise, just because the fact that there is an ability to go back in time and just undo everything that's happened, you kind of get that feeling that sometimes it's not as, like, you're not as worried about the characters because even if they die, you can always just go back and start again. I feel like that's the sort of, while it's like, what could be considered the gimmick of the show, there's still that sort of element, the idea of how much mental strain it puts on, like, the characters, well, specifically Subaru, because he can do that. And I guess there's always the possibility that after someone dies, there's a save point after someone dies, so that every time he goes back to try and undo that person's death, it, like, sort of puts him like after they died, so he can never go back and essentially bring them back to life again. I guess that's always a possibility that could happen, but up until this point that hasn't happened. And I think as soon as it got like to sort of like the episodes where, like, Rem and Ram started being like a bit more likable, because obviously that when they started out, they didn't trust Subaru, so they were always like, trying to kill him and shit. When they started to get very much likable, after that point, he'd already gone back in time several times. So I feel like that has obviously put a bit of a thought in my head. Like, it's just like, I'm getting a bit, I'm not as worried about the characters as maybe I should be. But also the fact that, and this obviously, people who were watching the show when it aired week to week, it doesn't really go for those kind of people, but the people that sort of binge watch it, when you binge watch something, you can kind of get more emotionally involved in the characters, because if you're binge watching a show, your emotions carry on from one episode to the next in a nice flowy manner. Like, you never come out of that emotional state. Whereas if, you know, so this is why it doesn't like, that's why I'm not talking about the people who watched it like week to week while it was airing, because obviously you have to come back, watch a 20-minute thing, you get emotionally invested in that one episode, and then you have to wait until the next week. So, but, you know, essentially when I'm reacting to shows, and because I do different shows every day, it's kind of harder to get emotionally attached to characters, because there's so many, you know, different stories coming in, and my emotional state like ends up being all over the place because I'm trying to put myself in loads of different characters' shoes across different shows and shit. And I think it just kind of, the amount of shows that I watch kind of just, I think, all, not like in a sense of like I kind of forget what, I feel like they're just meld into one a bit, so it's hard to kind of get emotionally attached. So yeah, I mean, that's probably why it probably feels like I'm sort of less emotionally involved. I might try and change some stuff around if I can, to like, so I can watch like more than just 2 episodes every week. If I can get ahead and then watch more episodes like in a sort of group, that may help the process, but that'll, you know, I'll have to see about that. And the big thing was obviously the end of the last episode, which was the big fucking monster thing. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to get into episode 16 of ReZero, so let's go. Okay, episode 16. Yeah, a very interesting one. I like how he had to face up against all of the other priestesses, or the ones who are up for being a priestess, whatever. All the royal selection girls, and all of them sort of, I feel like, teaching him whilst playing him, almost. I think more so with I don't think they were intentionally just trying to teach him, but the thing is because of the fact that he can actually just, you know, if he was to redo all of this again, he would have the information to sort of play to that sort of level. I think it's just trying to, like, you know, play politically. And the biggest thing is, like, you know, Anastasia, out of the lot of them, is, I feel like, the one who is very much, I feel like she's the most untrustworthy, because I feel like she's very, well, first of all, right, she meets Subaru in the street, right, and she looks completely different, and she's got like a different face on to what she had in there. I think so, anyway. She sort of held a... She sort of held herself a lot more open and kind, to get information from Subaru, essentially. Now, of course, Subaru got, you know, that the dragon carriage or whatever the fuck it was, from Anastasia. So it was pretty much a trade. But obviously, what Anastasia was getting out of the deal was something much more important. She got the better end of the deal, essentially. But she plays with Subaru a lot, because you can tell at the end there, she enjoyed revealing all of that. Like, you know, after she got what she wanted, I think she enjoyed, like, admitting that you just got played. You just got played, bitch. And the fact that she just walked out with, like, everyone, you know, every one of our supporters was the only people in that place. Really cool. But she's the one out of all of them that I would trust the least. Because she's definitely a master manipulator, you can kind of tell. Whereas Priscilla and Karsten are both more sort of upfront. You can kind of get that from Karsten mostly, because, you know, she's kind of just, she's very, I feel like she's very upfront with what she believes and what she stands for. You know, Priscilla to a lesser degree, but I don't think she has the real sort of, I don't think she has the mind for it, like the other two. I feel like, you know, when it comes to Carson and Anastasia, they kind of have a very like a good head on their shoulders for this, whereas Priscilla, I don't think she does. But they all taught him essentially something that he can take into his next life if he has to redo all of this stuff, which is all about like sort of like negotiating. And Anastasia said it best: it's like, no, be prepared for negotiations before you enter, because you know the only thing that the only thing that Subaru knows is what he wants. He puts everything out on the table all at once. So you know, and you know the way that he does it is so like he just puts so much like fucking, you know, he can come off as a madman. Like if we didn't know what he had been through and this was the first time we're looking at him, you'd think, what is what is this guy talking about? So you kind of have to, you know, see things from the perspective of, you know, the other people who are looking at him and think he comes off as a bit of a madman. Like, why the fuck would he trust this guy? But Carsten puts it really well. I think what the biggest sort of indicator that Subaru is as much in it for himself as he is for Emilia, maybe even more so, is that not once during that whole negotiation did he ever say that this is for like Emilia's sake. However, I think what is a very what is something to consider is Subaru's desire to save the village, more so, because you know, I think those are sort of like the characters that mean a lot to him, but they're not always like obviously in the story because they're all focused around in the village. But the villagers do play like a sort of a kind of like a just a bigger part in his life as the main characters do. But yeah, I think it's a real, it's sort of carrying on that idea that Subaru's not, he is sort of selfish with the things that he asks for. And you know, it's no surprise that she would look at him as you're crazy. And the quote that you know, where she says, you know, I actually do believe what you're saying, and that's what makes it more like crazy. Which is true. It's like, from her perspective, the fact that, you know, he's the fact that Subaru is saying everything that he's saying and he believes it's true is what makes it mad. Because in her eyes, how could it possibly be true? How could somebody get this information? So you can't like, you have to look at it from their point of view. They're just basically, you know, you can't exactly trust them because they've only known him how many days, and you know, he can't give up any information as to why he knows the information he does, because obviously he physically can't. You know, so there's that. But I mean, there is that whole thing of, I think what was more so interesting about the whole discussion and negotiation with Carson as opposed to the other two was that I think what Subaru said held a bit more substance because of Carson's sort of because of her stance in this whole thing. She's a lot more I think Carson is, you know, the one ruler who kind of holds a lot more honor than the rest of them, and the fact that she, you know, Subaru does tell us, look, these villagers, right? You know, I think the whole thing is, right, if it becomes a point of, right, if I get you to help, then Emilia is pretty much eliminated from the royal selection. However, she would be regardless. So it comes down to, does Carsten want to help a village of innocent people or not? Now again, it does bring back into question, like, well, you know, is this guy really sane? Like, is it because everything he's spouting sounds very much insane? But you know, I think that the fact that Carsten has that sort of, you know, ability to do it, I find that whole, you know, the fucking Subaru's amazing line as he walked out the doorway. He says, "I hope you become a great ruler, a dictator who abandons the weak." Like that was a fantastic line. I did enjoy that, to be honest, because I mean, you know, I think there's no like wrong side on that. You know, his negotiations with Carsten is the most interesting, because there's an honor bound sort of thing going on there, where Carsten does have the ability to do it, and she could easily just say that she wants to do it. You know, I think because really Carsten doesn't. Yeah, she can't guarantee she's going to gain anything from it, but she doesn't lose anything either. So the thing that comes into question is she willing to go out and save innocent villagers? And she still says no. So, you know, there's kind of that to consider. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Priscilla, you know, the whole thing of like, you've literally just, you know, you're just a pig who's greedy, essentially. Which is interesting. They're bringing up the whole, you know, the 7 sins again, which is interesting. I mean, I don't think we will in this season see all of the different cults, like of the different sins or whatever, but it would be interesting to see like how Subaru fits in with that, because I thought it was interesting his whole thing with the sloth cultists, because Beetlejuice was kind of interested in them, and I'm wondering if they were to meet the greed cult, if they would be like more lenient towards them, maybe like a bit more inviting. Just because, like, the way he is. Although I'm not sure if they kind of do the opposite. Because with Beetlejuice and Sloth, it felt like he was annoyed that people were being sloths. So maybe the idea is that you're supposed to do the opposite of the cult that you're in. So if you're a part of the witches cult that's the thingy of greed, then you'll be the opposite and not greedy. Which is strange, because that kind of goes against everything you'd think would come from like a dark cult kind of thing. You know, it's strange. It's a strange way of looking at it, I guess. But yeah, that would be an interesting thing. Also, yeah, Mimi as well. God damn it, I'm cute little bastard. But yeah, I mean, from the outset, Amelia she doesn't really have a good chance of becoming that, you know, or getting picked for the royal selection anyway. She's probably at the bottom of the barrel behind Feld, I'd imagine. I don't know how, you know, but yeah. I don't know what that fucking big monster thing was. What is that? What is that? Things just coming out of nowhere. I don't understand the whole thing with there was never an old guy with a bandana there. Because wasn't Subaru literally just like, wasn't he talking to him? Did nobody look along and just be like, "Who are you talking to, mate?" You know what I mean? If he was never there to begin with, like, did Rem not notice? I'm wondering if Subaru's just getting to a point where, like, if people are just looking at him and just being like, "Yep, that's Subaru, all right. He's just a bit nuts." So he's at the point where he's just talking to himself. I find it interesting as well that this was the first time that Subaru told anybody about the phone, right? because before he kind of passed it off as that that magic item kind of thing, right? And he did that again this episode with Otto, but with Rem he specifically said it's a future device. As he's never stated that he's from the future or anything like that. Like, people have stated like, oh, he's a weird person. Like he doesn't really fit in with anybody else. Clothes he wears and whatever. But like, I'm sure that's the first time he's literally told anybody that about like the phone like as it is and not like lying about it kind of thing. Although I find it funny the fact that because it's seemingly it's like an RPG world. It's a bit more medieval than the time that he's in. That he refers to his world as the future, because I'm thinking like it'd be interesting like if he was just like if in the world that they're in now they inhabit, if like given enough time it would turn into a a bustling fucking metropolis society, whatever the fuck, like the modern world we live in now. But yeah, don't know. We also met like that Russell Fellow treasurer guy who was at the Carsten place. That's another thing as well, is that like it depends on if it really depends on if Subaru's gonna die there or not, but like you can see like the sort of ins and outs of like the different royal selected girls, like, well, with Anastasia in particular, getting information on other selects, which is very interesting. Like they're trying to like play, obviously, do one over on the other person. But yeah, I think that's all. I really need to talk about. But yeah, I think it was definitely an interesting sort of episode for teaching Subaru sort of like the ways of like negotiation. The fact that he just spills everything out on the table all in one go. People know what he wants, so they can just play around that and like get a better deal for themselves. He doesn't hold anything back. But like I said, if he dies again, he comes back, he has to do all that again. It's just that I find it interesting that Anastasia is the one that literally like says quotes like, "You can't change your past." So she's always going to see Subaru as that one person, which means that whilst Anastasia was the most trickiest one, I feel like she'll be the easiest to trick from Subaru. Like Subaru will be able to trick her the easiest, I think, because she won't expect Subaru to do anything like that back. So it'll be interesting to see if that does actually happen. But yeah, that is all for this episode. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all next time. In the description below, I've links to certain things. All of them is a Discord. I urge everyone to go over there, especially if you want me to react to a certain show, because that's where polls and things start. And also Patreon. So if you do want to support me, you can do with Patreon. You can get a bunch of different rewards depending on which tier you sign up for. But there's basically $5 a month, which is the early access. So that gives you access to all the Patreon shows I do a week early. And also for Code Geass and Psychopaths, you get 4 episodes a week. So you actually get double that anybody else does. So that's pretty good value if you're into that sort of thing. So if you're coming for more reactions from me more frequently, you want to get that. $10 a month, that's a full length. So if you want to see my full unedited reactions to all the shows I do, everything I react to gets a full length, get the $10. $15 a month, that's the exclusive tier. So that gives you access to another show I'm currently doing, which is Parasite. That is almost coming up to an end now. So once that is finished airing, it'll go to to YouTube for the general public, and a new one will be put into the exclusive tier there. And also all OVA reactions and all movie reactions go into the exclusive tier as well. $50 a month, that's the elite tier. So every time you pay, you get a choice of a show that you want me to react to, and I will react to it. It'll go to the back of the list. There's about 7 or 8 shows in there, so it might take me a while to get round to them. But if you don't want to cut the queue and go at the very front so that your show gets reacted to next, and you want to get God tier, which is $100. Yeah, that was all. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.